I'm going to start with a question, and I want you guys to be thinking about this question as we go through our story today. If you could have anything, what would you ask for? If you could ask God for anything, what would you ask Him for? These last few weeks that we've been having class, we've been talking about David. And today, we're going to be talking about David's most well-known son, Solomon. And if I ask you guys, what do you know about Solomon? You might say, well, I know he's David's son, or he's a king, or I remember that he's really rich, or that he's wise. There are a lot of things we know about Solomon. Today, we're going to be talking about wisdom and the wisdom of Solomon. So let's turn to 1 Kings chapter 3, and we're going to start in verse 5. So 1 Kings chapter 3, it talks about how Solomon loved the Lord, and he followed his David, his father, and he only made sacrifices to the Lord. And then he goes to make a sacrifice to the Lord, and the Lord appears to Solomon in a dream by night. And in verse 5 it says, "And God said, 'Ask what I shall give you.' And Solomon said, 'You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant David my father, because he walked before you in faithfulness, in righteousness, in uprightness of heart toward you. And you have kept for him this great and steadfast love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne this day. And now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of David my father, although I am but a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in. And your servant is in the midst of your people, whom you have chosen, a great people, too many to be numbered or counted for multitude. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, that I might discern between good and evil. For who is able to govern this your great people?'" So the Lord comes to Solomon in a dream at night and says, "Ask for something." And Solomon talks about how the Lord was gracious to his father David. In other words, Solomon is king only because of God's promise to David. And Solomon knows that. He says, "I am king, even though I'm like a little child. Like, I have no idea what's going on, but you have made me king." And so he asks for wisdom, for understanding, to know right and wrong, to understand between right and wrong. And the Lord is pleased with this. And he says, because you've asked for wisdom and you haven't asked for riches or long life or that you'll remain on the throne or anything else, I'm going to give you wisdom plus all these things. It's an interesting thought, like you think Solomon's king because he's the son of David, right? But he was 10th in line. Like, he was David's 10th son, which means, as far as generally who gets the throne next, it's the oldest. And so Solomon is 10th in line, and he is chosen king because Nathan the prophet said he was going to be king. And so nothing Solomon has done has earned him the right to be king. And even at the beginning, it takes Bathsheba, his mother, and Nathan the prophet to get him to be king. Like, he's done nothing to deserve this. And yet, the Lord comes to him and says, "Ask, what do you want?" And so Solomon says, "I don't know what I'm doing. Please give me wisdom." Have any of you guys ever felt overwhelmed? Or the feeling like, I don't know what I'm doing? Or maybe you're going to be going to a new school, or your schedule is going to look different, or any of these things, and you think, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. Ask the Lord for wisdom. It says in James chapter 1, verse 5, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him." If you want wisdom, ask. Ask the Lord and he will give it to you. So sometimes maybe you feel overwhelmed with something that's going on, just like Solomon felt overwhelmed. Ask the Lord for wisdom and he will give it to you. But Solomon asked in humility. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this. The only way that I can do this well is with you. And so ask the Lord in humility for wisdom. One of the examples that the Bible gives about how Solomon showed his wisdom is in the next the next part of this chapter, and it talks about how there are these two ladies and they live in the same house and they both have babies, and in the middle of the night one of the ladies rolls over on her baby and kills it. And so in the middle of the night she takes her baby's body and switches it with the other lady's alive baby, and then when they wake up in the morning she's like, no, this is my son, your son is the one that's dead. And so the ladies come before Solomon and they both say, the alive son is mine, the dead one is hers. And so Solomon in 1 Kings chapter 3 verses 24 through 28, "And the king said, 'Bring me a sword.' So a sword was brought before the king, and the king said, 'Divide the living child in two, and give half to one and half to the other.' Then the woman whose son was alive said to the king, because her heart yearned for her son, 'O my lord, give her the living child, and by no means put him to death.' But the other one said, 'He shall be neither mine nor yours, divide him.' Then the king answered and said, 'Give the living child to the first woman, and by no means put him to death. She is the mother.'" So they come in, they say, the living child is mine, not hers. And so he says, all right, let's just cut it in half. Give one half to one lady and one half to the other. Because he knew that a mother would rather her child live than to live with her. And so the mother says, "No, please don't. Let her have him. I don't want my son to die." And so Solomon, in his wisdom that was given to him by the Lord, knows who the mother is. Would he have, if neither one of them said anything, would he have cut the baby in half? No, that was not wise. That would not have been wise, and so he would not have really done it. He knew that the real mother would say, "No, save the child." Another example or display of Solomon's wisdom is in the book of Ecclesiastes. And so he wrote the book of Ecclesiastes. And so there's a lot of, it's a wisdom book. And so let's turn over to Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verses 12 through 14. "I, the preacher, have been king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I applied my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to his children of man to be busy with. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity, and all a striving after the wind." That sounds a little bleak, right? But I want you to notice a few things about it. One is the wisdom. God gave him wisdom, but still he studied. He applied himself to study. And I believe that is because there's a difference between wisdom and knowledge. You may know a lot of stuff and still not be wise. And I think the difference is knowledge is just knowing facts, and wisdom is knowing how to use them to glorify the Lord. So Solomon goes out and he wants to learn all these things, and he applies his heart to seek and to search out wisdom, all that is done under heaven. And I want you to notice there's a difference between under heaven and under the sun. Because then it says, I have seen what is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity, a striving after the wind. So I read somewhere that under heaven means in a way that puts God in the center. And under the sun is in a worldly perspective where God is not in the center. And so it says, everything done under the sun, it's all vanity, a chasing after the wind. So if the wind is blowing and you run as fast as you can, are you ever going to catch the wind? No. And so living your life with God not in the center is like trying to catch the wind. It's never going to happen. It's never going to be fulfilling. You're not going to have joy or peace when God is not in the center of your life. So Solomon tries all of these things to try to find pleasure and joy without the Lord. And so let's read Ecclesiastes 2 verses 1 through 11. And as I read, I want you to be thinking of all the things that he tried. Like, you can write it down and make a list, or you can just think about it in your head, but I want you to count all the things that he tried. I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. But behold, this was vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? I searched with my heart how to cheer my body with wine, my heart still guiding me with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what is good for the children of man to do under heaven during the few days of their life. I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks. I planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools of which water the forest of growing trees. I bought both male and female slaves and had slaves who were born in my house. I also great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and the treasure of kings and provinces. I got singers, both men and women, and had many concubines, the delight of the sons of men. He tried a lot of stuff. Pleasure, laughter, wine, houses, vineyards, gardens, parks, fruit trees, pools, slaves, herds, flocks, silver, gold, singers, concubines. A lot of stuff. He tried all these things. Have you ever felt like, if I could just have what they have, or if I could just have just the newest iPhone, or just the whatever it is, have you ever thought, if I could just have one thing, then I would be happy? Solomon was king. He had the resources to try it all, and he tried it all. And he came back and he considered. Then I considered all that my hands had done and the toil I had expended in doing it, and behold, all was vanity and a striving after the wind. There was nothing to be gained under the sun. So without the Lord in the center, there is nothing to be gained. It's all chasing the wind. This is the wisest man, the one that God gave wisdom to. And he says, it's all meaningless unless God is in the center. A few things I want you to take away from this lesson. If you are feeling overwhelmed or you need help, pray for wisdom. The Lord will give it to you. Also, true wisdom comes from the Lord. True wisdom comes from the Lord. If you think something sounds really smart, like, oh, that's a really good idea, but it's not something that lines up with what's in the Bible, it's not wisdom. It's not wise. There's a lot of things in our world that sound smart that are not of the Lord. And true wisdom comes from the Lord. And true wisdom shows that everything is and will be meaningless unless God is at the center. So as you read the rest of Solomon's story, we may notice that he did not use wisdom all the time. The Lord gave him wisdom, but Solomon didn't always use it. Kind of like the Lord gives us gifts and talents, but we don't always use them sometimes. So Solomon, just because he received wisdom from the Lord, did not use it all the time. So when you continue reading his story, don't think that everything he did was wise, because that's not the case. But we are showing you a few examples of the wisdom of Solomon, where he understood people and understood their hearts, and also understood the world around him, and that the Lord needs to be in the center. So you guys, as you go throughout this week, I want you to recognize, when is the Lord in the center of your life, and when is he not? What things bring you joy and what things don't? If you're chasing after things that are not of the Lord and expecting to be happy, it's meaningless. Seek after the Lord. Let him be center of your life.